most important thing about a personal brand is really understanding and identifying what I call this is what's the weather you bring with you. You know, what is the thing that no matter what, you can be counted on to bring to the projects you're a part of, the teams you're a part of, the people you work with, the clients you work with, the organization you're a part of. And I think when you deeply understand what that contribution is, then you can start to close the gap, right? For a lot of people, there's who they are in there and there's how they're represented online. And it's a very big gap. And what falls in between that gap are opportunities, clients, jobs, investments, etc. So the more you can close that gap authentically, right, the stronger your personal brand will be and the more opportunities that you have.
And most of us who are, we are all using social media somehow, but somehow there are some reluctance, some business people as to how much is right, how much is wrong. Should I put this on? Should I not? There's a big conflict. How professional do we want to look? And how I think social media works best when you are really yourself, right? But, in the back of our minds, there's that reluctancy. What do you have to say about that? What's too much? What's not? Like, how should people decide on their own?
That's a really important and great question, and it's something I deal with all the time. First of all, I'm a certified color strategist, as you can probably tell by the color I'm wearing.
I love your jacket, yeah. And we have the same taste with Leonard in terms of couches.
I know, you two
are the same color.
You two are like got it together. That's a great painting behind you. So I think it's a really interesting question, and I'm going to tell you why. And I get asked it all the time. I was just doing a webinar for about 12 executives, all senior executives in a multi-billion-dollar company. And this question came up where one of the presidents of one of the divisions said, I'm working at home, and at home I wear a t-shirt and sweatpants. So that's authentic. So I don't see why I should be on a Zoom meeting wearing anything other than a t-shirt and sweatpants, because that's authentic. And I said, the problem is the game has changed. And while that's authentic for what you wear at home, you wouldn't go to the kind of business meeting you're on Zoom in a t-shirt and a sweatpants. And the problem with that is if you look just at the research, I'm very big about research and studies, right? If you just look at the research, there's something called enclothed cognition, which is a whole branch of research they've done on how the clothes you wear impact not only the experience other people have of you. And by the way, this is all subconscious. None of this is conscious, right? It happens at a subconscious level. It's what Malcolm Gladwell called in his book, thin slicing, right? It's like this instant, quick feedback or image or feeling that you get. So it's not only that enclothed cognition has an impact on the people who you're talking to and how they perceive you. They've actually done this research that shows that you and I, depending on what we're wearing, the colors we're wearing, how formal what we're wearing is or not, will perform differently on tests. Our productivity actually gets affected by what we're wearing. So I think there's this balance. Like, it's as authentic for me to wear a t-shirt and a pair of jeans as it is for me to wear this jacket. But on an interview like this, of course I'm going to wear this jacket because that's more appropriate to what I'm trying to create in terms of the brand on this kind of a video call. So I think what we have is, we have the pendulum is swinging to this very kind of woohoo, anything goes, wear what you want, it's just Zoom. I think it'll swing back more to a middle ground because it really does matter what you wear. Yes.
I think the words that I take out from what you just said is balance and the middle ground, like somehow not all the way to the right or left, but a middle ground.
No, like you're not wearing a tie. I just want to say you're not wearing a tie, but you're wearing a jacket, you're wearing a shirt, you have a nice background behind you. You've got a professional look going for what you're doing. Yeah.
Got it. Leonard, we don't want to judge you because you're not wearing a jacket. But
no, and I wasn't judging you, Leonard.
What do you have to say about the question itself? The personalization of social media and how can we, best way possible, personalize our social media and interact that with our own also businesses?
So it becomes difficult when you kind of look at the business brand and then you look at the personal brand. You have your business brand, and in most cases, they're typically very corporate, very stuffy, and they kind of go into one particular lane. Like working at an academic medical center that does over $1 billion in operations and since it's an academic institution, you have to think about the prestige, the reputation, how they want to portray that they're the best in the world. And then you have a lot of physicians that you're kind of working with as well. At my particular institution, there were over 650 different physicians. Some of these people were extremely smart. They knew how to do brain surgeries. They knew how to go in there and just like do all types of surgeries all across your body. And I mean, to get to that level of expertise, it does take 10, 15 plus years of training and schooling and education and going out into the field and becoming an apprentice. So these are some of the people who are the very best in the industry at what they do. Now, when you kind of look at the real world though, like if I mention like a doctor, like Dr. Jonathan Russin, most people would be like, who is this guy? I've never actually heard of him. He's a neurosurgeon. Or maybe someone like Dr. Stephen Giannotta. He's a guy who the character over in Grey's Anatomy, McDreamy, that's who his character is based off of. But is a regular person supposed to even know that? When you kind of look at these people, like each and every single one of them has a specific character to them that makes them absolutely unique. When you look into the world of medicine, for example, which relates a lot to business as well, you have so many different people who aren't able to stick out because they try to stay in their lane and only talk about their expertise. So now let's say there's 100 neurosurgeons online and they're all going out there and just talking about neurosurgery. What makes one person different from the other? If you look into the world of plastic surgery, there's like 2 people over in Beverly Hills who get like next to 80% of the business. The reason for that is they know how to go out there and market themselves. They know how to go out there and brand themselves. So the people go out there and say they're the best. You go into a community of plastic surgeons, you go to one of those conventions, they'll be like, that guy is the best academically, but guess what? In the real world, no one knows who that number one person academically is. And they all go out there and they go, yeah, that person who portrays himself they're the best, like they don't really know what they're doing. Their techniques are out of date. But the public doesn't know that. So that's one thing for that. Another thing is when you look at the money that they're bringing in, the people who market themselves the best, they're bringing in like 10, 20, 30 times more than the average plastic surgeon. While the person who is academically the best is only going out there and doing about 2 times. What does that say? That means that people need to go out there and showcase their personality, showcase who they are. And like you said, Karen, you can't kind of go too far and go out there with the t-shirts and jeans and everything, but you have to find that even balance where you have your professional end and you also have who you are as a person. Most of the times when I start working with a client, what I do is I focus on creating a bio first. I won't go out there and start with the business questions. I'm like, hey, Jimmy, what I need you to do is I need to sit on the phone with you for an hour and I need you to tell me about your whole life. Tell me about your early life, your childhood, how you were raised, what your family values were like, what kind of struggles you faced, what was it like going through school, junior high, high school, your first relationship, your first entrepreneurial venture, the first business that you got involved with, and take me all the way up to where you are today. The reason for that is, one, I get the compelling story that goes outside of the areas of expertise. And later, I have so much data for the personal information. So then when I tie in the business information later, I could go and match and mirror the personal to the business and combine it together where you get both ends kind of going out there and showing you as a full person of who you are. That way you're able to relate and go into your brand halo for your corporate business. And also you're able to uniquely distinguish yourself as a person.
Yeah. Leonard, we hear a couple of big words in branding and marketing right now. One of them is Internet of Things, which is very technology related, but it's in our life. So branding and marketing and the Internet of Things is, what we are using, the things that we use at home, at office, etc. How does technology is getting into branding right now?
So in the world of technology, I mean, there are a lot of tools that you could use to potentially help you. And it really depends on the type of person you are. Some people have extreme difficulty adapting to new technologies, and that's okay. Like when you really think about going out there and branding, it's nice to have the fancy tools. It's nice to have like the tools that let you go and automate your voice and turn it to text, or go out there and transform different things in your life, but they're not necessarily the tools that you absolutely need. When we think about communication, on the other hand, there's three main forms of communication. There's audio, there's visual, and there's a written word. So it's kind of like we could go out there and go and chase all of these fancy toys and everything, or we could stick to the basics. If we think about how content is consumed, we have this video conference right here. So that's video that could be put on YouTube, that could be put on LinkedIn, that could be put onto other different places. We have the written word, which could be put on our own website, on Quora, on Medium, on Facebook, and so forth. And we have audio that could be put across different podcast networks. If we think about those three mediums in general, and we focus on just those three, then we don't have to look at all the shiny toys, like all the new IoT devices that do come out. While they could help, they're not necessarily absolutely essential, because most people are still on those three main platforms. Like we're reading, we're writing, and we're watching video, and we're listening to things. So if we think about how human behavior has evolved, sure, a fancy tool might be able to help you, but it's not an absolute necessity for what you need to do.
And how do we decide? Again, my question comes like the prior question: how much of it right? How much of it is wrong? Like what platforms do you use? There's always some new. For instance, TikTok right now, right? We think of it as for like younger generation, but I see a lot of businesses now are basically focusing on TikTok for branding and marketing, and it's the future, and it's really still organic, like Facebook used to be. It's showing everything on video, etc. So how much of it is right? How do you pick which ones are right for you? Does it all come back to what Karen and you agreed on, which is like find the balance, find the point there, what works, or there's any other tricks that you can think of?
So most people have absolutely no idea which platform is going to take off for them. Like a person who I worked with, he's the former VP of IoT over at Cisco Systems. For him, the particular platform that worked with him was LinkedIn. For a day trader, it was Quora. For my real estate client, it was Instagram. So every single person has a different one that takes off, but you don't know which one's going to take off. So what you have to do is you have to start your approach being omnipresent. That means going on every single platform and syndicating your content from your website and everywhere else. Every single person should have their own website with their own name. So like for me personally, it's leonardkim.com. For Jimmy, it would be jimmykunyit.com. For Karen, it should preferably be her name as well. For anyone who's visiting, if you're able to buy your name, that becomes your physical location. That becomes the one thing that you own on the internet, no matter what. If everything in the world goes bad, that thing is still going to be there. For example, we've seen social media platforms shut down in the past. Some people put all their eggs into one basket, and that thing's gone in an instant. TikTok's going through government, or the government's even looking at potentially shutting down TikTok. Whether or not it happens, that could potentially cause a lot of creators out there to go out there and lose their careers. So when you take an omnipresent approach, you're able to go on every single platform. And then what you get to do is you get to go and track the analytics and see the results and go, wow, this Quora thing, that thing's actually working a lot better than I thought it would. Or, whoa, I'm actually getting a lot more presence on LinkedIn. Or Facebook is doing extremely well. In some cases, it may be TikTok as well. It really depends on what kind of business that you have. Like if you have a consumable good and you're the CEO of that company, maybe the product placements for your company would work a lot better on a company like TikTok. Maybe if you're working with executives and you're going out there and you're a management consultant, LinkedIn would probably work a little bit better, but we don't actually know until we go out there and try. So by taking an omnipresent approach, it's usually the best way to really go out there and see what market is going to really cater to you. Because some people's YouTube channel will just go and take off, and some people's LinkedIn will go absolutely nowhere. And the only way you get to see that is going testing every single thing, making the best content possible, and flipping the equation around from what platform should I be on to how do I make the best content possible that's going to completely resonate with someone. If you look at most content nowadays, for example, when it comes to the written word, most articles are about 500 words each. They're about the size of something that you can read in about 3 to 5 minutes. If you think about all the 500 words articles that you've read in your life, there's probably like 1, 2, maybe 5 max where you're like, wow, that article really took me away and really touched me. But then if you think about it, what if you were up to go out there and invest more time, more effort into creating that article, made it about 2,000 to 3,000 words, combined research, real world experience, used examples, and then had that out there as opposed to that 500 words? Would that touch more people? And then if you flipped it around from that 30-second or 15-second TikTok clip or that 1-minute Instagram video, and you expanded it to about like 7 to 10 minutes, like how rare is it to really see a 30-second clip and for us to go, wow, that was absolutely amazing. There's so many commercials being developed each and every single day, but most of them we just look at and just go, oh, okay, cool, and we move on with our days. But then when you have more time and you have the ability to go out there and tell a compelling story and combine it with research, real world examples, or whatever it may be, you have the opportunity to really go out there and speak to someone, to touch them, to really get to know, like, and trust them. And you have the opportunity to get them to even potentially fall in love with you. And if they fall in love with you, chances are they're going to go and do business with you too.
Karen, what's your take on that? Like in terms of choosing the right channel, do we go omni-channel, trial and error? What do you usually talk to your, let's say, CEO branding, CEO clients, etc.? What's your take on that?
I take Leonard's point about, I call that being ubiquitous, that you do have to be sort of omnipresent and everywhere. I actually disagree. I think that what a lot of people do is what I call drunk marketing. That's actually the title of the next book that I'm working on, The End of Drunk Marketing.
Oh, great.
I think a lot of that's the next book that is
catchy.
About to come out in about 6 months. I think a lot of people do drunk marketing today. So they go, I got to be on Facebook. I got to be on Twitter. Now it's TikTok. I've got to be on TikTok. You know, and I had a client call me the other day, hysterical. I have to be on TikTok. TikTok's the hot thing. It's the new thing. I'm not on TikTok. And I said, wait a minute.
But isn't it? I mean, because it's organic and
it is, except for here's the problem. Her market is women between 50 and 65 years old who are at home. They are not consuming their information on TikTok, and he doesn't. So that's just, it's a very specialized product. So TikTok, while it could be the craziest, most popular thing on the planet, that's not who it's for. Now, if you have a cosmetic company like e.l.f. and you're running a campaign on TikTok, you're going to do really well because your audience is there. So for me, it's really more of a matter of doing the research. Like I do a lot of social listening research for my clients to find out where actually are their clients actually consuming information. Is it on blogs? Is it on Twitter? Is it on TikTok? Is it on Instagram? So I think it's really, you have to identify where are the 2 or 3 main places where your audience is consuming information. And then I very much agree with Leonard. You have to be doing the highest quality informational content you can on whatever those platforms are. I think the problem becomes that people feel this pressure to be everywhere, and then they do everything in a very mediocre way. Right? Because unless you're a $1 billion corporation, if you're the CEO of a $5 million company or a $10 million company, or even a $150 million company, by the way, or if you're a solopreneur, even if you're an extremely successful executive or entrepreneur, what they say to me is, I don't have time to be working all these social media avenues. So while I do agree you have to watch the statistics and see what's performing, I don't personally have my clients start by doing everything everywhere. I really have them start based on social research, on market research. Where's the most likely, I call that sober marketing, right? Where's the most likely place for them to gain traction? And then if it doesn't happen there, you switch over. But for the most part, I think if you do the research, you can at least narrow the field down. So I think that's one thing about being on social. I think the other thing is that this is where the authenticity comes in. You cannot just talk about me, your business. I think of it as concentric circles, right? In the heart of the circle is your business and who you are and what you do. Then the circle outside of that is all the subjects that are related to that. And then all the circle outside of that are all the subjects related to that. And so you have to be having about 80 or 90% of your content on social needs to be, as Leonard said, extremely high quality and valuable. But it doesn't mean it all has to be your content. It can be curated content. There's no reason you shouldn't be promoting other people's content in your field or related to your subject. You know, I post stuff by other marketing and branding experts all the time on my social media because those people are contributing to the overall conversation. So I think we've gotten away from being really specific and precise, and we've gotten into a lot of this drunk marketing about, I'll try Facebook ads, but that might not be the right thing for you. So I do think you have to measure the results, and you have to be not just on one platform, because as Leonard said, things go away and disappear or they change. But I think you also don't have to be on everything doing a mediocre job. And again, I don't actually even think there is one right approach. I used to live in Hawaii. And Hawaii is an island, as people know. And because it's an island, you do get bored fairly quickly, especially if you're a city girl, right? I live in New York.
That beauty, right?
It's beautiful,
nature.
But I live in New York, so clearly I like action, and I'm a city girl. But I lived in Hawaii for a period of time, and on a very tiny island too, by the way, not even a big island, a very tiny island in Hawaii called Molokai. So of course I did what everyone does, which is you start studying hula dancing, because that's one of the only things there is to do. And I remember once going into it's called a halau, is what a hula studio is called. Going into the halau of my hula teacher, and there was a saying up on the wall in Hawaiian. And I said, Kumu, what does that saying mean? And he says, that saying means not all knowledge is contained in one halau. He said, I might teach you the dance one way, but another teacher who comes from another lineage may teach you the dance another way. And I cannot tell you how much I've used that within the course of my career as a branding and marketing strategist. I don't think what Leonard said is wrong, and I don't think what I'm saying is wrong. I don't think there's one way to look at this. I think you really have to do the research for your business, for your personal brand, and determine which path is actually the right one for you. And this is where I think people make the biggest mistake. They don't put in enough time up front to figure out what's the right strategy and path. They're so busy rushing into the brand and the buzz building that they don't really take the time to define the platform, whether it's a personal brand or a business brand. So that's how I see it.
I want to talk about budget a little bit. Let's say we are a small business owner, which I think, because most of our viewers are, there's a certain amount of budget that we allocate to branding. And we see it in the world of branding and marketing, the advertisement dollar from, ad advertising to, regular advertising now is turning more and more to the social media. How do you allocate your budget? If you say, let's say $10, you have $10, how would you decide how to spend it? Social media versus regular ad in a newspaper, etc. I mean, there's statistics to show that, but how would you choose? How would you tell me?
First of all, if you only have $10, if you only have $10 for branding and marketing, you probably shouldn't be in business.
Well, I just want to get percentages. Let's say I have $100,000.
Okay, that's a better number. Leonard, you want to go first?
Sure. So with a business, you should probably allocate at least about 20% of what you're doing to go out there and put into your marketing and advertising efforts. When you think about like digital versus traditional methods, it really depends on what kind of business that you have. Like if you're an e-commerce company and you're going out there and selling like maybe like a pen, I don't know, like a metal sign or something, like chances of that happening in the real world with like traditional methods of marketing are pretty slim. Chances of that selling online on like maybe Facebook ads or like TikTok ads or like Snapchat ads are extremely high. So when you think about like the different type of business that you operate, it really helps determine exactly where you should be putting those marketing dollars. So one thing is like when I was working with the academic medical center, we dedicated about $13 million into marketing every year. I'd say about 40% of that went into print communications. About 50% of that went into like traditional media, like TV buying, ad buying, billboards, and all that other stuff. And about 10% of that went into the digital marketing efforts. And as time has kind of progressed, like while the print and the traditional methods used to be extremely effective, as time just kept going on and on and on, like the results from the digital side just kept growing further and further and further. And all of a sudden, like in this last few years, those digital efforts have done hands over heels what the other efforts have done for the other traditional ways of marketing. So when you kind of see how things are progressing, especially now, like with COVID, next to every single person is staying home. That means they're mostly either in front of their TVs or their computers or their phones. Usually it's the phone and the computer. That means that they're on the internet, whether they're using social media or different media outlets. If you're thinking about where you should be putting your ad spend, it should be on the platforms that they're on as well. So it does take some research to figure out who your audience is. Naturally, if you already have a customer base, you could build your customer avatars around that and go, okay, there's this person, this is what their traditional habits are, and you could go and use that to really go out there and nail the research on what type of platforms your person's on. Or you could go out there and do research and try to figure it out as well. There's multiple ways to really go and narrow down that audience, but it's making sure that you're not just blowing money online and like advertising on Reddit for a company that has nothing to do with the Reddit audience, where you could advertise onto something that they're actually consuming and where they're actually participating.
And Karen, let's say you decided on a percentage. Let's hear what that percentage should be, and then how do you allocate it?
I don't really
print versus.
I mean, I agree that it's usually between about 15 to 20% in general, but I've actually found in practicality, businesses that are small, that do between, let's say, $1 million and 10 million a year, usually their budget is anywhere between, again, if they're $1 million, $30,000 to $100,000. If you're between about $1 million and 10 million. If you're between 10 million and let's say 30 million, your budget's going to be closer to 100,000 to 250,000. Once you start getting over 30, 40 million, like, and bigger, then your budgets usually get into, a couple of 100,000 plus. It's not until you're a much bigger company, you're $175,000 a year, $175 million a year company, that you're looking at maybe a budget of $500,000 to $1 million. That's just in practicality what I've noticed from the companies that I've worked with. But the one thing that I think a more important question is that budget, how do you make sure that budget is being spent effectaciously? So every week I get calls from executives that go something like this. Hi, I got referred to you by someone because we'd hired somebody to do a website and to do some social media to build our, to fill our funnel, and we spent $30,000 and we didn't get anything out of it. I get that call every single week. So I think there's a lot of due diligence that you need to do before you spend any money on anything. Because if you spend $30,000, but it doesn't produce anything, what was the point? And I think the other thing that people don't understand, that those budgets have to do with creating a series of touch points that result in business. It's not, okay, I'm just going to spend $20,000 on Facebook ads and I'm going to get $40,000 worth of business. It really doesn't work that way today. If you look at it, they used to say it took 7 touch points before you closed a client, before you got the sale. Well, the statistics are now it takes something like 10 touch points. So I'll give you an example. A CEO called me last week. His company probably does about $500 million. So, a nice, good sized mid-cap company. And he goes, hi, I want to hire you to do my CEO brand. And I said, okay, well, where did you hear about me? And he said, well, about a year ago, I Googled you and you came up and I looked at your website and I really liked it, but then I got busy. He said, and then a few months after that, I Googled you again and I saw you did a podcast and I listened to the podcast. He goes, but I got busy. Remember, this is a CEO. He said, then a few months later, I looked you up online and I saw that you were interviewed. And so I listened to the interview and I really liked the interview and I got busy. He said, and then last month I looked you up online again and I saw that you were writing a blog for Inc. And I looked at the blog and I decided to call you. And so my question is, well, which of those things got me the business? And the answer is all of them and none of them, right? So all of those things were filling the top of the funnel and moving him along until it closed. And so I think we have to look at these things as that our budget doesn't just go into one thing like advertising or Facebook or phone calls or LinkedIn campaigns. It's that we have to spread those budgets out in a way that we're really doing a good job at all those touch points, because that in its combination is what brings the client in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Leonard, in terms of business, for the young generations, the big word is now like purpose driven. And all the companies are like trying to focus on the purpose of it. It's true while they're hiring, and it's also true evolving what they're doing as a company. In branding, what is the meaning of purpose driven company, and how can companies brand themselves purposefully?
Well, purpose comes internally from company culture. Like if you go out there and say you want to go and save the environment, but no one inside the company actually cares about it, then you're misportraying a message and you're just trying to go out there and win the hearts of people. But the truth is, if you have a brand message that you want to go out there and a purpose that you want to stand behind, you have to go and make sure that the people at the company actually stand behind that as well. So that comes from a human resource standpoint where they have to go out there and rally the troops together and create that culture and make sure that everyone is standing behind the unified purpose and that they all agree on exactly what they want to go out there and communicate to the world. When you have that coming down and everyone in unison about exactly what they want to go out there for their purpose and their mission, then that automatically goes and bleeds into the type of content any of these people are creating. When you look at a large organization, sure, you could just be the CEO going out there and building your personal brand, but let's say you've got 5,000 employees. Why wouldn't you want the opportunity for each and any of your employees to potentially go out there and be branding themselves as well? Like Adobe, for example, they did a great job and they set up a CMS system where everyone could go in there and contribute their own content to go out there and push it out. So then each of their opportunities have the opportunity to build their personal brands along as while Adobe is building it as well. And as far as employee engagement goes, that's one of the best programs that have actually executed and launched. While I was working with the Academic Medical Center, I set up a social media boot camp as well, so all the physicians could go out there and take ownership of their own social media profiles too. So when you kind of think about the purpose and everything, if you have the brand message going out there and it has a specific purpose going on, and you have the people communicating at the company with that same brand or same purpose-driven message sprinkled into their content, not like they're talking about it 100% of the time, but maybe 1 out of every 10 to 20 posts, and it being inclusive of that brand or that purpose-driven message, then it all looks like it's in unison, because now it's not just the brand who's haloing that effect, but the people as well.
Karen, what's your take on purpose-driven branding?
Remember how I said at the beginning of this, I started out as a management consultant? So I have a really interesting way I look at this. I think of this as branding. I call this branding from the inside out. You know, the message that you put out to the world has to be really consistent and parallel with how you're running your organization if it's really going to be a powerful brand. You know, the joke of this is the airlines that always go, you know, dedicated to giving you the service you deserve, and then you get on the plane and it's horrible every time. You know, no one believes them. It really rings as inauthentic. And I have found in the work I've done, both as a branding strategist and as a management consultant, in terms of this branding from the inside out, that there's really 5 places an organization has to align to be authentically seen as purpose-driven. And one is there has to be a top-down commitment. You know, the senior executives of the organization absolutely need to really truly believe in what they're saying the brand is authentically. It can't just be, you know, spin. The second thing is that you have to measure it. If you're not measuring it, it isn't real. Because the reality is what gets measured is what gets done. And that's true whether you are a 10-person, $5 million organization or a 10,000, you know, $500 million organization. It doesn't matter. You know, so there's measurement. There's also reward and recognition. What people get rewarded for is what they know is really what's true. So if you promote and you say you're one thing, but you reward based on something else, then people, your internal staff, right, won't believe it. You also have to make sure that your standards and your policies and your procedures are aligned with whatever you're saying that brand message is. And then finally, there has to be the training and the education piece that trains and educates people about how do they represent as a brand ambassador. How do they represent that brand to the world? And if all 5 of those things aren't aligned, you don't really have a truly purpose-driven organization. You can say anything you want, but you will very quickly be found out as not being an organization that lives true to that message.
I want to talk about influencers, Leonard. I mean, influencers, the word came about a number of years ago, and it was kind of a very negative image to it. It's just a couple of names were, just online, nothing being created offline, etc. But nowadays, influencers are more and more, really getting results, which is connecting companies with products, etc. What do you think about the influencers, and how can brands associate themselves with influencers? What do you see in that genre, like the influencers' effect on branding and marketing?
Well, you need to figure out how to, one, make sure that you're working with the right type of influencer that's going to be catering to your specific product. Like if
I
you're,
think a lot of the things that we talk about coming down to like the balance and the right connection, ourselves and our product, our company. And again, if it's the influencer, it's the right, correct match, I think.
well, if you're a service-driven company, chances are working with an influencer isn't going to work. If you're doing B2B services, I don't really see how working with an influencer is going to work unless you're paying them for an endorsement, but then you're basically just buying their endorsement too, which is probably not best practices. Anyways, when you kind of look at like the things that influencers are actually promoting that does work, it usually is on the product side. It's usually like apparel, it's usually like foods, it's usually like dog food, like consumable products. So one, if you're going to take the influencer approach, you have to have something that's probably consumable that a lot of people that are actually going to buy. And two, you need to be familiar with what type of influencer that you're going to be working with. Like, let's say you watch YouTube and you like Jenna Marbles because she has her 2 puppies or 3 puppies and she's going around and doing all these fancy things in her home. That might be a good audience for you to maybe portray some type of dog product to, because that's what her audience is, that's what she's doing. But then also you have to consider the price points of the people who are actually popular. More times than not, they might be too expensive for you to actually pull in a return off of the influencer deal. Sure, you get your brand impression, but you have to kind of balance it to the point where you're working with the right influencer and you're leading profitable campaigns. There's a lot of campaigns that are ran that don't actually end up profitable as well. If you want to do things a smart way, you go with the personal branding thing and you go out there and with the people that you're working with internally, you build up their personal brands as well. And you make your own people the influencers for the product. Or you go out there and you look for the existing customers who are already going out there and creating user-generated content, focus around your products and services, and you figure out a way to integrate them into your marketing efforts and see if you could offer them rewards or something so they go out there and advocate for you further.
And Karen, Leonard is a good point. He says you need to look at it B2B or B2C, and that makes a difference. And it makes total sense.
Yeah.
If you are B2C, to more focus on influencers.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I agree. I mean, I think if you're doing cosmetics to teenage girls, and influencers might be a good idea. I'm pretty clear. I rarely use influencers with my clients. Now, most of my clients are B2B, but even with B2C clients, I pretty much don't really like influencers. I don't like this whole model of people getting paid to be pushing stuff out to their audience. I think if you're going to push something,
but it's growing every day. It's like,
yeah, you say that, but there's also a backlash. I've been reading a lot of stuff where there's a backlash because a lot of influencer marketing has become part of this drunk marketing, where people think they're going to get a big return on an influencer and they don't. They pay a lot of money, but they don't get the return they thought they were going to. So I think you can create influencer marketing just by doing a really good job yourself, influencing other individuals who you don't have to pay. So I'm just not remember what I said about there's no one right answer for all marketing. I'm not particularly a fan of influencer marketing. I don't really use it for my clients very often. I think there's other ways to generate the same results without paying someone to do it. However, I do think that if you're B2B, influencer marketing is probably not the way to go. If you have certain B2C consumable products, then there's something to be said for it. But I wouldn't base my campaign on influencer marketing. Just personally, I would never have a client do that.
Makes sense. And we are all living in an era of COVID-19, and Leonard is in California right now, which is really have it really bad right now. We here in New York and New Jersey are doing good. Hopefully that doesn't change, but it changed a lot actually. One, of course, economic wise, you know, we are all on a standstill right now, but it's also changed a lot of things. I think it pushed technology a little faster of thinking. Look at what we are doing right now. I mean, I also have a company who does, you know, B2B events, meetings, etc. I would be thinking, you know, physical, you know, us together on an event, but right now we are doing this, you know, live online. So I wanted to ask you the effects of COVID-19 on branding and marketing. Leonard, do you want to take on that?
Sure. So as a digital marketer, it just has had more effect on the marketing efforts that I've done years ago. The interesting thing about going out there and putting content up online, not just on social media, because social media has a small timeline, but on your own personal websites, onto content syndication platforms, creating articles, YouTube, and places like that, is that the shelf life of your content becomes a lot longer than what you would think it would be. And as that continues to grow, as more people are using the internet, going out there and searching things, staying at home and being in an environment where they're not moving to the office or going out to the restaurants, and they're just having more time in front of their devices, that just means that if you're going to go out there and build a personal brand and you're going to go out there and start creating digital content, now is probably the best time to do it, more than any time ever, because you have the platforms to go out there and create content on. Like for me personally, I don't think I've created a single piece of content for maybe about a year, aside from my book. And I still have about 2 to 3 people emailing me every single week from the residual efforts of the stuff that I did 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. I think I get about like 50,000 visitors a month on all of, on just Quora alone. With my personal website, it's about maybe about 25,000. And I'm not going out there. I'm doing zero marketing efforts for myself. I'm not spending any ad spend. I'm about to go and spend some ad spend to get things to really go and move up and like propel things forward. But I haven't been doing any personal marketing myself, and new business just keeps coming in month after month after month. So if you really think about things, if you're going to go out there and look at things pre-COVID, post-COVID, I mean, COVID has really just gone out there and affected how digital marketing works all together. It shows and puts into focus that everyone's going to be in front of their computers. They're not going to be hopping onto planes, flying from meetings here and there. The whole travel industry is being changed altogether because of this whole entire thing. People are going to be taking less vacations. A lot more people have come to the idea that staying home is something that they're familiarizing themselves with, that they're becoming comfortable with, that they're actually being able to do without the stress and anxiety and other issues that come with it within like the first month of doing so. And because of that, user behavior has gone a lot more digital, and a lot more people are using these devices. So if you really want to go out there and do these digital marketing efforts, now is the time where you could really go out there and reap the biggest rewards. So it's probably the best time to do it.
And Karen, what do you think? What are branding and marketing learning from COVID, and what do you think what new changes are coming up post-COVID?
I think COVID has accelerated some changes that we were on the verge of having anyway. I just think that COVID accelerated. And to me, I see that there's really 3 C changes from COVID that are taking hold. And one is where virtual is going from an or to an and. So virtual used to be sort of the stepchild of live. So we preferred live conferences, but if we had to, we'd have a virtual element. I think what people are seeing now from switching over, because we're all having to do virtual conferences, right? There's no live conferences right now. I think what everybody's seeing is that you're going to have an and world, even when we can go back to having in live person conferences. You'll always have kind of a virtual piece built in to the live piece. I think that's one big sea change. So whether you're, again, a small company with 5 people or a company with 5,000 people, you need to think through as the CEO, how are we integrating virtual into our business right now? Because that's definitely here to stay. So I think that's one sea change is the integration of virtual along with live and how you're using virtual and thinking it through. So that's one. And by the way, that includes video conferencing. You know, I'm shocked at how much training I've been doing recently with executives on how to actually have executive presence on Zoom and how to lead Zoom meetings, because it's a new skill, right? We've all been on video, but doing the work that we do on Zoom is a new skill for a lot of people. So that's kind of one sea change that I see. The other sea change that I see is that, you know, that trust is the only commodity that is. And as Leonard rightly said, right now, the way trust is happening is digitally. It's online. That's where people are figuring out if they can trust you or not. So I've had clients people who've called me and said, I really want you to do some work for me. And I said, I can't do anything with you until we get your website where it needs to be, because all we're going to be doing is driving people to a website that doesn't convert because it's so horribly branded. And I've had a few people say to me, oh, well, I don't want to spend the money on my website. I just want to spend the money on social media. And I'm like, there's no point, right? Because all you're doing is, right, Leonard? All you're doing is driving people back to something that doesn't convert. And by the way, I've heard that many times, not just once.
And
so
you talk about that heavily in your book, about like doing the main basic right things.
It's unbelievable how people just resist that. So I think the second sea change is that COVID's really pushed us into having to have complete digital trust and digital credibility. Like there's no option. By the way, both as a business and as a person. So like I've had a huge uptake in CEOs calling me to do their CEO brand, because they realize as they're out there trying to get investors, as they're out there trying to get employees, some of them don't even have a decent LinkedIn profile. And of course, what do people do? First thing they do is look them up on LinkedIn. So I think that's the second sea change. And then I think the third sea change is what I call from shiny object to substantial, which is part of the drunk marketing thing. I think there was a lot of shiny object going on, and people were starting to see through it and realize there was a whole lot of smoke and smoke, but not a lot of substance to a lot of stuff. And I think what people are looking for now is real substance, real value, real content, and they just won't put up with anything less than that. So I think those were all things we were on the precipice of, but I think what COVID did is it just went like a whoosh, right? It completely just moved the timeline up on it. And by the way, I think COVID's terrible, but I don't think those outcomes are terrible. I think those are 3 good outcomes of the sea change in business and branding and marketing from COVID. I'm personally happy about those sea changes.
I'm really big on networking, planning to write a possible book, started up actually on networking. I think it's really valuable in our lives and in our businesses. Leonard, what do you think about networking? What it is? How do you network? What are the benefits and pros and cons? Can you talk a little bit about networking?
Sure. So when networking in person, kind of awkward, a little shy, and it's just a little weird to just go and like maybe like tap someone on the shoulder and just be like, "Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you." Like it's just not a natural encounter for someone like myself. But then it's easy to go out there and just go and find someone to talk to on like let's say I wanted to talk to you, Jimmy. Like I go out there and look you up on your profiles and I'll be like, where should I communicate with Jimmy? I look at your Instagram, I look at your Twitter, I look for your email address, I try to compile the information together. And I'll be like, what message could I send to Jimmy where he would actually communicate back and message me back? And if I kind of do the research into that, the networking opportunities that I have online have an extremely high success rate of people emailing me back. Like, I've emailed people like Ariana Huffington and had a response back. Speaking bureau, like people who run speaking bureaus, like all this other stuff. And like, it's kind of weird. Like when you get to a point where so many people actually respond, like, I sent an email to Jeff Bezos one day. While he didn't reply personally, he sent it over to someone on his team and they replied as well.
Oh, great.
So you know, it's kind of interesting because people will read your messages. They will go out there and look at what you're saying. So you have the opportunity where the network, where the world is kind of flat. And I think when a lot of people kind of work in like a corporate environment, they see this hierarchy structure where, oh, you can't go out there and be like a project manager and go and email the CEO one day. That's just going to break so much protocol. But then you could go out there and email someone at a different company and email the CEO directly and probably get a response. So it's kind of breaking down those traditional methods of hierarchy and the traditional ways where people are able to communicate and those old school ways that people believed in before. Because now, as a lot of people are moving into this digital platform, it's kind of evening the playing field where you could be anyone in the world and you have the opportunity to connect with anyone in the world. But then it goes back to your personal brand as well. If you send someone a cold email, chances are they're going to go and Google your name, look up your LinkedIn profile, look up your website and things like that. So if you don't have your personal brand in order, then it becomes a little bit harder to network. It's like kind of like going to a conference and wearing like a scrappy shirt with like stains on it, as opposed to like putting on the suit. Like people might not want to actually talk to you. So you kind of have to take that same approach when you're going out there and building your personal brand, because that way you have a higher opportunity to network with people and have them actually respond to you. And that could be anyone. Like you could go out there and theoretically just go and find clients all day and message people and probably have a high success rate of doing that. Like if you have your personal brand in order. So, well, that's not something I personally do. It's very, very possible to do it.
Karen, networking.
Well, we will get back to networking in person. And years ago, I read a book called How to Work a Room, and it solved all my personal networking problems. Because the one thing I read in there that she said is practice host behavior, not guest behavior. So if you were the host of the event, just behave the way you would behave as the host of the event. And that has just made networking in person super easy for me. So that's one little tip I'll give for that. But, you know, I've really found that during this time of COVID, networking has actually, I've always been a good networker, but networking has been really easy. I completely agree with Leonard. I never have any consideration about reaching out to somebody. I don't care who they are, because the worst thing that'll happen is they won't respond. You know, the good thing about having been starting out as an actor is you get really used to hearing, no, thanks, don't call us, we'll call you. So rejection doesn't bother you. You're just like, okay, whatever, next audition. So I totally agree about reaching out, as long as you're reaching out in a respectful way with quality, you know, et cetera. But also people will Google you. So you want to have your stuff together so that when they look you up, they realize you're a serious person. I'll even joke when I email people sometimes and I'll say, feel free to look me up. I promise you'll see I'm not nutty. You know, which often gets them just to look me up, just to see if I'm nutty or not. And then they write back, no, you're right. You're not nutty, right? Because I look very credible online. So I think that's a really important thing for your personal brand to be in shape, as Leonard said. But I also think when it comes to networking, you have to be strategic. You don't want to waste people's time, because everyone gets a lot of stuff in their inbox these days. So if you're going to reach out to somebody, you should be reaching out clearly saying why you're reaching out, what your request is, what you're offering to do for them, if there is something, why you're reaching out, so that people actually understand, even if it's just, I'm just reaching out because I read what you wrote and I really like it and I wanted to tell you I'd love to connect because I think we'd have a lot to talk about. That's fine. I mean, I do a Thought Talk podcast once a week, and there's people that I will hear interviewed on. I heard somebody interviewed on Bill Maher, and I thought, now that guy'd be great for my podcast. And I reached out. He's a pretty high guy, but I got to his PR person. She looked me up online. She saw I was legit. She saw the other people that have been on my podcast. She made a connection. He was on my podcast. So, you should go for it, but you should go for it with purpose.
Absolutely. Okay, we are kind of getting to the end of our great meeting today. I wanted to ask you both actually on if there's any plans for, I think, Karen, you're working on a book, you said. What are your future plans, new projects? Leonard, what are you working on? What people should look out for?
So I guess I'll go first. Currently, I've been expanding my digital marketing agency and moving out of the corporate world where I was also working. And I've been bringing on a lot of key partners who kind of cover all the aspects of the full stack of a funnel. With the marketing funnel, you have the top of the funnel, you have the middle of the funnel, and you have the bottom of the funnel. And when most people go out there and go and search for a marketer, they get someone who's like good at maybe like 1, 2, maybe 3 different things if you're lucky. But then there's like 6 or so different aspects of marketing that really are required to go out there and create a successful campaign. And finding one person who's good at doing all of that is like next to nearly impossible. So that's why I created the team to really go out there and do these things. People I worked with in the past and kind of built a lot of trust with. And that's where my main efforts are focused on. I also have a course that teaches people how to go out there and build their personal brand, get featured in publications, grow their social media following. And I also have my book, Ditch the Act, Reveal the Surprising Power of the Real You for Greater Success. I've been considering if I should write another book or not, but this one did take a lot of time, so I'm not 100% sure. It's a pretty high output or high input effort that I'm not sure if it's had the same type of return that my content online has had. Considering how much effort it took to put into that book as opposed to a lot of the articles and the content that I put out there in the past from just publishing online. So, I mean, also this is traditional method of marketing in the bookstores, digital marketing with the articles and everything that are online. I'm still under the impression that the digital is beating the physical.
And Karen, what are you working on?
Well, the brand mapping strategy, build, design, and accelerate your brand was my 9th book, my 9th traditionally published book. So my 10th book, No Nonsense Time Management, will be out, also traditionally published by Career Press. That'll be out in December.
The drunk marketing is going to be the one after that?
The drunk marketing is the one I'm writing now, and that one, the time management one, the no nonsense time management, which, by the way, you can pre-order on Amazon now. That's going to be out in December 1st. The drunk marketing book is going to be out in April 2021. That's the one I'm writing right now. And then, I'm very heavily focused right now on CEO branding, branding for CEOs, personal branding for CEOs, executive branding, personal branding for executives. And then I'm actually doing a lot of fractional CMO work where I'm going into mid-sized companies, between 10 million and 175 million, and helping take them across the line as a fractional CMO. So that's pretty much what I'm focused on. And then, as you know, I write a column for Inc.com, and I write for my own blog, and I do my Thought Talk podcast. So I would say all that keeps me pretty busy.
Great. We'll look out for those books, both of them. And Leonard, what's your personally most favorite social media platform and business-wise?
Sure. So I'd say Twitter is my personal favorite platform. It's interesting. You get to see every single thing that goes on in the world. If you use it the wrong way, or like most people use it for, you get to see too much drama. So you really have to put in the filters and everything to make sure that you're able to use the tool correctly. But it really gives you the opportunity to really go out there and connect with so many different people. Twitter is the one place where I've been able to just connect with so many different people in the world, like people that I would have never imagined would be even possible for someone like myself. And when it comes to like the business advice, I think what people would really have to do is, I think what most people do when they go out there and build businesses and things like that is they try to put some expectations in their head and try to force those results out. when you try to go out there and force results, usually what ends up happening is you force yourself into a box. You start looking at the numbers and metrics and kind of focusing too much on the end result. When if you flip it around and you think about the input instead, and take the expectation out of it and go out there and just go out there and create the best product possible or the best piece of content possible, and you put that love, effort, and the passion into it, you have a much better chance of that actually going out there and succeeding. Like if I started my writing out with going, oh, I'm going to go get 1 million reads on my content, after my first month, I would have gave up because I was at about 1,000 reads. Because I was like, you know what? Let's just see where this goes. Within 6 months, it hit 2 million reads. So if you kind of have that expectation at the front, drop it and go and flip it around and do it for the passion instead. I mean, you're still going to have in the back of your mind that there's a result that's going to come from it. But if you do it from the passion-driven input approach as opposed to the result-oriented approach, you're going to have a lot more success with your project.
And Karen, what's your favorite personally, and what are you generating real business from?
Well, my favorite personally is Instagram because I'm a photographer, and so I love seeing photographs and images. So Instagram is my personal favorite to look through, but the one hands down that I use to generate business is LinkedIn. LinkedIn has proven to be an excellent social media platform for me to use to generate connections, etc. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, my personal favorite is Instagram, and I can't believe how amazingly resourceful LinkedIn is for business wise. And
incredible.
In our business, I don't think we are generating that much in any other total of the other platforms versus LinkedIn. I mean, it's really great. Thank you very much for both.
Thank you so much.
Great. And thank you for joining us. Please go look up their books. For Leonard Kim, it's the Ditch Act. Karen has a lot of books, but I'm interested in the drunk marketing just because of the title is so cool.
But for now, have them go look at the brand mapping strategy.
Okay, for now, brand mapping strategy, which I'm reading right now, we're underlining a lot. That's actually how I ended up, meeting you online and inviting you to this program because it's a great book. Thank you very much for both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.